They told me I'd disgrace the uniform. In that room full of officers, I stood alone, while they read out words I didn't write, lies typed under my name. My service stripped from me one sentence at a time. No one looked up. Not the men I'd flown beside, not the commander, who once called me the best he had. I remember thinking this is how integrity dies, not in battle, but in silence. When they dismissed me, I walked out into the cold and swore I'd never beg for the truth again. My name is Marin Voss, and a week before that humiliation, I broke formation in a blizzard to save a child. I didn't know that single act of mercy would make me an outcast, or lead me straight to the Admiral himself. They told me never to break formation. That night I did, and it changed everything. The wind slammed against the windshield like shards of ice, the rotors slicing through a sky that looked more like a frozen wall than air. My headset crackled with static, a jumble of coded chatter, and the occasional heartbeat of silence. Then it came, faint buried in the interference. A voice. A woman's voice. "Please, my boy." Protocol said, "Ignore it." Commander Dunn's voice cut through the radio firm and final, ordering me to maintain course. But the radar in front of me pulsed with a weak, flickering beacon, one that shouldn't have been there. I stared at it pulse, hammering the sound of my own breath loud in my ears. If I was wrong, I'd lose everything. If I was right, someone wouldn't die alone in the snow. I turned the stick. The world vanished into white. The landing was blind chaos, wind, howling snow, whipping against the hull. I spotted a small cabin half buried under drift. Inside, the air was still cold as stone. A woman lay slumped near a dead stove, her lips blue, her hands still covering a child curled tight beside her. I tore my jacket open, wrapped it around him, my name patch pressing against his skin. "It's yours," he whispered. "It's just a jacket, sailor. Stay warm." By the time I called for evac and got back to base, the storm had eaten half the coast. When the debriefing came, I said what I had to. Radar glitch. No civilians found. That night, I sat alone in the dark, wrapped in a blanket that couldn't keep out the cold. I told myself I'd done the right thing. But the next morning, in the mess hall, I heard Dunn laugh. "Someone went sightseeing last night, huh?" The room erupted in laughter. I forced a smile, but deep down I knew something had shifted. A single choice made in the storm had already begun to change the air around me. And a week later, the name stitched on that jacket would echo through a room full of brass, and nothing would ever be the same. A week later, I thought the storm had passed, until the Admiral said my name. The hangar was lined with perfect symmetry rows of pilots frozen at attention, the scent of jet fuel and cold metal hanging thick in the air. Dunn's voice barked across the line, reminding us to stand tall, to stay silent, to make the base proud. The inspection was routine, but the tension felt different this time, like the air itself was waiting for something to snap. When Admiral Alexander Reddick stepped inside, every breath in the hangar seemed to vanish. He moved down the row slowly, eyes sharp posture, like the ocean before a storm. When he stopped in front of me, my pulse stuttered. "Lieutenant Voss." He said, "You broke formation that night." I froze. "The boy you saved, he's my grandson." The hangar fell silent except for the steady hum of the ceiling fans. My mind replayed the blizzard, the snow, the boy's pale face against my jacket. Reddick's tone wasn't cold, it was steady. Reverent, almost human. My daughter and grandson were trapped off Juneau. He told me a pilot wrapped him in her jacket. "The one with your name on it." My throat tightened. All I could manage was a rough, "Yes, sir." He nodded once. "My family owes you more than words can cover." When he turned away, the silence felt heavier. From the corner of my eye, I caught Dunn's stare, flat, unreadable, but burning with something sharp. Jealousy, calculation. A quiet promise that this would cost me. The next day, a sealed envelope waited on my desk. Dinner invitation, Reddick's signature at the bottom. By evening, the whispers had already spread through the barracks. Voss saved the Admiral's golden boy. "She's getting promoted next month." Dunn passed me in the hallway, his smile razor-thin. "Enjoy your hero moment while it lasts." I wanted to believe gratitude could exist without consequence, that a good deed could remain pure. But by nightfall, the laughter in the mess hall had shifted tones. My name wasn't praise anymore. It was rumor-heavy and dangerous, moving through the air like static before another storm. They say heroes don't lie. I never lied, but the truth was rewritten for me. 2 days after the dinner at Redicket's house, an email appeared in my inbox, subject irregular flight pattern under review. My stomach dropped as I opened the attachment, a radar map from the night of the blizzard. No distress signal, no anomaly, just a clean, empty screen, as if that child and his dying mother had never existed. Dunn was the one who'd filed it. He caught my eye in the corridor, his tone casual, like we were discussing the weather. "Standard protocol, Lieutenant." Nothing personal. The next morning, I was summoned before the Internal Review Board. 3 officers sat behind a desk, their faces unreadable. When one asked why I broke formation, I answered the only way I could. It felt like the right thing to do. They wrote in silence, pens scratching like insects. I could almost hear judgment forming behind their still faces. By afternoon, my access codes were suspended. Dunn had maneuvered faster than I expected. Later that night, I managed to check the system logs. His digital signature was there, brief buried, but undeniable. He'd tampered with the radar archive. That same evening, another alert flashed across my monitor, anonymous, unsigned. "They've erased your log. Watch who smiles at you." The message disappeared a second later, leaving only the faint reflection of my face in the dark screen. Outside, the wind howled against the metal walls, a sound too familiar, too close. I sat at my desk, staring at the pilot insignia, resting beside the lamp, the silver dull under the yellow light. If kindness could start a storm, maybe truth could calm it. I didn't know then that the next storm wouldn't come from the sky. It would come from the men I once saluted. The storm outside had passed, but the one on base was just beginning. 3 days after Dunn's report, I was grounded. My access card taken, my nameplate removed, and every greeting on base replaced by silence. The same people who once trusted me now looked through me as if I'd vanished. At the briefing, Dunn stood before the projector, voice steady, tone rehearsed. Lieutenant Voss deviated from formation. No distress signal verified. She falsified her report. A single truth twisted into accusation. When they asked why I changed course, I said only, "Someone needed help." "Who?" "I don't know his name." Silence followed heavy as the snow outside. That night, I slipped into the operations room. The radar logs were locked. "Access denied" glared red across the screen. As I reached to power it down, the radio hissed to life through static. A voice whispered between frequencies. "They're rewriting your logs. Check Terminal 3. Tonight." I crossed the tarmac under freezing wind. Through the hangar windows, I saw Dunn leaving the tech room, a drive clutched in his hand. Inside, the console still glowed faint blue, his access code stamped across the logs. I started the download, but before it finished, the power cut. Darkness swallowed the room. Someone had pulled the switch. Back in my quarters, I stared at my uniform hanging limp in the half-light. The radio crackled softly, like a heartbeat out of rhythm. Maybe truth has its own frequency, and no one's tuned in. They asked for the truth, but truth without proof is just another story. The next morning, I faced the investigation panel. 3 officers, Dunn beside them. "Lieutenant Voss, your record shows falsified data. Explain." "The data was changed," I said. "By whom? Only you had access." If I told them about the rescue, the boy's mother would face prosecution. So I stayed silent. "Silence noted for the record," Dunn said. By noon, the base was whispering. Voss's hero story was fake. Even Alvarez, my old mentor, looked away. Later, I discovered the suspension letter bore the seal of Northern Command. The case had gone political. That evening, Alvarez found me near the runway. "Don't fight with anger, Marin. Fight with proof. It flies farther." He slipped me a note server code numbers written by hand. That night, I used it. The screen blinked, one file found backup partial. Before I could open it, the lights died. Footsteps echoed in the dark hallway. They turned off the power, I thought, because I was about to turn on the truth. Orders were supposed to hold the world together until I watched them tear a good man apart. I'd been grounded, my office sealed with red tape, my name erased from every flight roster. The whispers spread fast. The Admiral's pilot is under review. Once Washington got involved, I knew I was no longer a person, just leverage. Alvarez handed me a fax that morning. Subject: Congressional Inquiry on Admiral Alexander Reddick. Case reference: Voss incident. The man who'd defended me was now being accused of shielding me. Guilt sat heavy in my chest. That afternoon, I saw Dunn talking to two visiting officers, smiling like the world belonged to him. "The system always cleans itself," he said. That's when I realized he wasn't just after me. He was part of a movement to replace Reddick, the last commander, who led with heart instead of fear. That night, Owen Kearns found me in the old hangar hands shaking. He'd seen Dunn in Terminal 3 tampering with the radar logs. He gave me a flash drive with partial data coordinates of the cabin time shifted back 2 hours. Altered, but still proof. If I sent it, Reddick could lose everything. If I stayed silent, truth would die. His words echoed, "Kindness can outrank command, but it can also destroy it." I sent the file to a lawyer in D.C. The message bounced back, restricted transmission. Sitting near the runway, I watched other helicopters rise into the dark. They'd grounded me, but I wasn't done flying. The radio hissed softly. A faint voice broke through the static. "You're not alone, Lieutenant. Keep the truth warm." My breath caught. I knew that voice. 2 weeks later, snow buried the base. My suspension became official. The headline read, "Admiral's protege accused of misconduct." I was no longer a pilot, just a talking point. In the mess hall, Dunn told a reporter, "Make sure your story ends quietly." That night, Alvarez found me in the storage room, smoke curling from his cigar. "They're using you against the Admiral." "Don't let them." I asked what to do. "Wait," he said. "Truth doesn't shout, it echoes." Then the radio cracked again. "The proof is with the boy." My blood ran cold. "Ben?" I called Rachel Reddick. Her voice shook. "We're not supposed to talk to you." The line died. The next morning, an order arrived. I was to testify in Washington. That night, Dunn met me in the snow. "Truth doesn't matter if no one wants to hear it." I met his eyes. "Then I'll make them hear." Back in my room, I traced my name on the torn jacket. "If they want silence," I whispered, "let's see how loud it can be." When the transport lifted off, I watched the northern lights fade behind the clouds, faint but still burning. They said truth was just paperwork. That morning, Truth walked into the room wearing a child's backpack. 2 weeks later, I was escorted into the Federal Navy Board in Washington, D.C. The chamber was cold, its metal walls echoing every breath. 3 flag officers sat at the head table. Admiral Reddick stood nearby as a witness. Across from me, Dunn waited calm and certain, as if the verdict was already his. "Lieutenant Voss, you stand accused of falsifying mission logs and endangering personnel. You may defend yourself." Dunn began, voice polished and precise. Lieutenant Voss deviated from protocol to stage a rescue she fabricated. She altered her report afterward. He paused, smiling thinly. "This isn't about heroism. It's about integrity, hers or the lack of it." When my turn came, I spoke quietly. "If doing what's right means breaking formation, I'd do it again." A ripple spread through the room. "That's not a defense," the chair said. "No, sir, it's a statement." Then the doors opened. A guard whispered to the clerk. Admiral Reddick rose. "Yes, sir, I do." He placed a small orange GPS on the table. "My grandson carried this." It recorded the exact coordinates of the cabin that night. The screen lit up my flight path aligned perfectly. Forensic reports followed. The radar system was accessed after the mission using Commander Dunn's credentials. Dunn shot up pale. "That's impossible. Those files were shared." Reddick met his eyes. "Shared by you, Commander. To yourself." The room fell silent. I looked at him, not with anger, but with pity. Truth doesn't need permission to exist. It only needs time to surface. The ruling came fast. My record restored. Dunn suspended. I saluted once steady. When I stepped outside, Reddick said softly, "My father used to say, there's no revenge purer than truth." "Truth doesn't win fast," I told him, "but it wins clean." We walked into the noon light, the first warmth after the longest winter. I thought justice would feel like victory. It didn't. It felt like quiet. A month after the hearing, a letter arrived in handwriting neat enough to belong to another time. Come to Maine. My family would like to thank you properly. It was signed Reddick. The house sat on a cliff above the Atlantic gray stone against gray sea, the waves below breaking like distant applause. There were no uniforms, no speeches, just dinner, and the kind of silence that comes when people have already said what mattered most. Rachel opened the door, her smile soft, her eyes tired in the way of someone who had learned how close she came to losing everything. You saved my son, she said. You also saved my father's faith in this uniform. Inside, Ben sat on the rug, piecing together a model destroyer. He wore a tiny jacket with my patch Voss stitched crookedly above his heart. When he saw me, he ran over arms wide, smelling faintly of salt and glue. I kept your jacket, ma'am. Grandpa said it's lucky. I knelt, brushing a hand through his hair. It's not lucky, Ben. It's brave. He grinned, reached into the pocket, and pulled out a small square of torn fabric. I sewed it to my backpack. It keeps me safe. The scrap was from my flight suit, frayed at the edges, but still holding its color. I traced the stitching, realizing it had outlasted the storm better than I had. Reddick poured coffee by the window, the horizon dimming into evening. Dunn's gone, he said. Demoted. Discharged. His record reads forged command data. He stared at his hands. He was brilliant once, but he forgot that honor can't be coded. He opened a velvet case, revealing a silver medal for valor in adverse conditions. I shook my head. With respect, sir, I already got what I came for, the truth. He studied me for a moment, then smiled the faintest smile. After dinner, we stepped out onto the porch, the wind carrying the sharp scent of salt and pine. The sea stretched endless calm, unjudging. You reminded me that leadership isn't about control, he said quietly. It's about heart. Then we both learned something this winter, I answered. Behind us, Ben's laughter broke through the steady rhythm of the waves. I closed my eyes and let the sound sink in. Justice, I realized, isn't the roar of a crowd or the crack of a gavel. It's the quiet peace of knowing you no longer need to prove anything at all. Spring came late that year, but it came. Back in Alaska, the ice had retreated to the edge of the sea. The sky was streaked with thin, slow-moving clouds, blue as memory. The air smelled of thaw and salt. When I walked across the tarmac toward my helicopter, the hum of its engine felt like a heartbeat I'd been missing. I'd been reinstated quietly without ceremony. No applause, no handshakes, just a flight order with my name on it and the familiar weight of the headset resting against my collar. When I lifted off, the world below opened into miles of glassy water and melting snow. The Bering Sea glittered like a second sky, cold and endless. The place where everything had once gone wrong and then somehow right again. The radio came alive with the calm voice of the tower. Sitka Air Station, visibility clear, wind eastbound. Roger that, I replied. Lieutenant Voss reporting. Formation reestablished. Beneath me lay the island where I'd broken formation that night. The cabin was gone now, swallowed by the melt, replaced by new green. Only a pale trail cut through the forest, like a scar fading with time. I switched the radio to open channel, letting my voice drift into the static. To anyone out there, keep your frequency open. Sometimes the faintest signal carries the loudest truth. The line hissed softly, then cleared. For a moment, I caught my reflection in the cockpit glass, older, steadier, but still looking toward the same horizon. They grounded me once, I thought. But the sky never stopped calling. The helicopter rose through the amber light, sea and sky blending into one. Somewhere below, waves whispered against the shore, quiet and constant. Not every battle is fought with anger. Some are won with kindness, and time delivers the rest. As the sun dipped toward the edge of the world, the sky turned to fire, and the horizon glowed like something reborn. Justice, I realized, didn't roar. It shimmered silent and sure where the sky finally cleared.